great to be joined by Justin Bercovich, Pop, and you know the Bercovich family. Sam Bercovich passed away on May 27th, and he did lots of great things for the community in Oakland, and Justin here to talk about it. Hi, Justin. First of all, our condolences. How are you?
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I'm doing all right. It's been a rough week for the family, but we're getting through it.
Yeah, Justin actually texted me, what was it, Wednesday night or Tuesday night when your grandfather passed away. And I just seeing the full page, the Raiders took out, John, of the sports section of the Bay Area News Group on Sunday, the back page, a full page thank you to Sam Bercovich, born in 1916, passed in 2014. And they wrote to one of the finest human beings the Raider family has ever known. Your contributions and lifelong commitment to the city of Oakland will always be remembered. And Justin, I was getting choked up even thinking about it. I wish I was at his funeral on Thursday, but John and I had to tape a TV commercial. But I was thinking about him all day yesterday, and it just struck me what a profound impact he had on so many people's lives. Tell me about the ceremony on Thursday and what they said about your grandfather.
Well, it was a really nice ceremony, and the rabbi talked about all the things he had accomplished and the impact he had on so many lives. He sponsored, as you know, Greg, youth baseball teams in Oakland for decades. It actually began with his father back in 1929 and lasted through the 1980s. And they sponsored American Legion teams, Connie Mack, Babe Ruth League teams, and they provided the gloves and the bats and the balls to get kids off the streets and provide some structure in their lives. And some of the guys that played for him went on to major league careers, including guys like Frank Robinson and Kurt Flood. And so he really had a huge impact, not just in the history of Oakland baseball, but also many of these kids grew up to be just solid citizens in the community. And so that was talked about quite a bit, the fact that he had on thousands of kids' lives.
Justin Bercovich joining us. Sam Bercovich, of course, successful businessman, owned Bercovich Furniture in Oakland. And as you said, Edward, your great-grandfather, started that tradition. Why was it so important for your family to give back like that?
Well, first of all, the family had a passion for baseball, and that still exists to this day with my dad, his brothers, and then my cousins and I. And so they loved baseball, and they wanted to give back to the kids in the city of Oakland, and they really felt that besides grooming future major leaguers, that they were building solid citizens in the community. And my grandpa was obviously very proud of those that went on to major league careers, but he was equally as proud of those that just went on to lead good lives. And, you know, it's very important for people to have structure in their lives at a young age. And so when you're taking these kids, you know, off the streets and giving them the equipment to play baseball in an organized league, that really set these people on the right path. And Frank Robinson famously said that my grandfather took the knife out of his hand and replaced it with a baseball bat.
Wow. You mentioned some of the names. I mean, Oakland has such a great tradition in the history of producing major leaguers, Justin, as you well know. Willie Stargell from Alameda, Kevin Maas, Ricky, Vada Pinson, Kurt Flood, who changed baseball forever, Dave Stewart, Joe Morgan, Tommy Harper, Frank Robinson, Don Wakamatsu. And I know the one he was, I don't want to say the most proud of, but I remember when Randy Johnson joined the Giants, he had a picture of Randy, and Randy corresponded with him over the years to thank him for all he did. So just so many major leaguers were touched by your grandfather. He was a remarkable man.
He was. And he read something, I think it was a magazine article about Randy probably 6-7 years ago when he was starting to get into the twilight of his career. And he was quoted in there, I believe, as saying that the most fun he ever had in baseball was playing for one of the Bercovich baseball teams. And my grandfather always got a lot of pride in hearing things like that, and he always had a smile on his face. And it wasn't just those players that played for him he was proud of. He just was a friend to everyone, and it didn't matter if you owned a football team or if you were working the cash register at Costco. He was nice to everyone, and in return, everyone was nice back to him.
And you mentioned owning a football team. Probably his best friend, and I think Al's best friend, throughout the years was Al Davis. Sam and Al were real tight. And your grandfather, that's how I got to know him so well, as he traveled very late in his life, as you know, on every single Raider road game, and just a great guy to be around and just a great smile. How did Al and your grandfather first come into contact?
Well, they met in the early 1960s when Al first came out here to coach the Raiders back in 1963. And they developed a friendship then, and when Al came back as the owner of the Raiders after his stint as the commissioner of the AFL, they reunited, they ran into each other, and Al invited him to go to a game. And then that turned into a lifelong friendship, and my grandparents sat with Al and his wife Carol in the owner's box at every Raiders game for 40 years. And Al, as you know, Greg, was so loyal. Loyalty was very important to him. And if you were his friend, he was going to be loyal to you. And so my grandparents got to do some really amazing things as a result of that friendship.
You know, a couple things I remember about your grandfather. And John, you're traveling on the Raider charter. There's some pretty large men on those airplanes, you might imagine. And your grandfather could out-eat them all. And he was a little guy. I mean, what did he weigh tops? 170 pounds. He was skinny, looked great in his suit. But, man, when he sat down to eat, he really went at it, Justin.
Yeah, he was blessed with that metabolism. And I fortunately have followed in his footsteps, at least at this point. I hope that it continues when I get to be that age.
And the other thing, because he traveled with Al and Carol and Dr. Albo, so they would go early, about to the games, and then after the game they'd be on the first bus, and Al would want to go watch football on a Sunday. So and then I'd come on the plane. And invariably, the later years, the Raiders weren't as good. And your grandfather was so frustrated with the way they played, he'd come back and talk to me and just be talking my ear off and getting rather loud. And the players then would be coming on the plane on the later buses, and they'd hear everything he said about Kerry Collins. Where's he throwing the damn ball? And he had such a great passion for it. It's just such a loss to have him. But he lived such an amazing life, Justin. But he was quite a guy.
It's funny. He was such a nice man, as you know, and everyone was a friend to him, and he always had a smile on his face, never raised his voice, never said a bad word. But if the Raiders were losing, he wasn't very happy. And that's the thing. Whenever one of his baseball teams that he sponsored or the Raiders, he didn't like losing very much. Yeah. And that was the only time you could really get him animated like that.
He was priceless. He'd be real loud, John. They could hear him in the back row. The players would be looking like, what's he talking about? But he would go off on him. It was priceless. But he was Al's buddy, so who's going to say anything to him?
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Justin Bercovich is joining us. He's the grandson of Sam Bercovich, who unfortunately passed away on May 27th. But as Pop said, when you have a ceremony like that and you look, and I read a lot of the interviews and listened to a lot of the things, and Pop obviously knows him so well. Do you just at the ceremony kind of laugh and have fun and celebrate a great life because he just accomplished so much?
There was certainly a lot to celebrate. And he lived to be 98 years old, and he died peacefully, and what more could you ask for? And so it was really a time to tell stories and just go back to the past for a few minutes and think about all the good times, because there were so many good times. And he has 7 grandchildren, and we all spent some time just reminiscing about our childhoods and the experiences that we had and the fondness that we had for him. And he really adored all of us and always showed it. He never, forgot to tell us how much he loved us and all his friends and family. He was really a remarkable man that way.
Man, I so wish that I had sat down with him. You and I, in his later years, Justin, talked about, rolling a camera, but he wasn't quite as lucid in the later years. But he had such a wealth of knowledge about all the players that he impacted and those Raider teams. I just wish we would have rolled a camera to have his thoughts and remembrances on his life, captured forever. But we've lost someone that's meant so much to the East Bay, but I know you're going to carry on the tradition now. Working with us over at Comcast Sportsnet Bay Area. And you're actually working A's baseball now, aren't you?
Yes, I'm producing some pre- and post-game shows and producing the All A's program. So I'm still carrying on that tradition of Bercoviches in baseball.
That's great stuff.
And your granddad was so proud of you. Every time I saw him, he'd say, how's Justin doing over there? Keep him in line. So he was so proud of you, Justin.
That's great. Hey, Justin, thanks for the time. And again, our condolences. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me, guys.
Thank you, man.